food is so much more than calories. It goes beyond that. How is this nourishing me mentally and physically when someone is underfueled? For performance, they are in a chronic energy deficit. With underfueling, a lot of the symptoms or signs that you see, they have poor energy, so they have that greater perceived exertion. So the same workouts, they feel harder. Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough carbs? Are you getting enough fat? If we can at least get the timing spot on with that, you'll see a world of a difference with performance, with recovery, with sleep, all of it.
What are some things that folks can do today that will contribute to their short-term performance, but also ensure that they're healthy years down the road?
The first thing that comes to mind is
Angie Asche, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so damn pumped to talk to you. You have such just a really interesting mix of experience, both with men athletes and female athletes. And we're just going to dig into all of it today. So
I'm excited.
You ready to go?
Yes.
All right. We're going to start with a little rapid fire icebreaker,
okay.
Which we'll come back to a lot of these, but feel free to, expand at any point. So true or false? Eating too little is more common than eating too much in high performers.
True.
You should eat differently depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle.
True. To an extent.
Okay. True or false? Recovery shakes are mostly marketing hype.
True.
I can't wait to talk about all of these. Yes or no? You can't out-supplement a poor diet.
Oh, yeah, you definitely cannot.
Gosh, right?
No.
100%.
Wish we could. Be a lot easier, huh?
It'd be so much easier just to take a damn pill. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's so hard to make meals. And yeah. True or false? Carbs are essential for hormonal health.
True. Oh, for hormonal health. I mean, I would argue more fats, but still true. Very true.
Yeah. This is such an interesting point. I just talked to, do you know Dr. Benjamin Bickman?
No.
He's a metabolic scientist.
Okay.
He's out of Brigham Young, and he was just talking about, and I think this is what I'd love to talk to you, about today is just this idea of, some of the differences between fueling for performance versus fueling for longevity. And,
totally.
He says basically carbs are not essential, which when you
heard that
think
argument
about it, when you look at it mechanistically, it's not true. Carbs are not essential, but obviously they play a role. And
totally.
The conversation is we're going to focus on athletes today. We're going to focus on performance mainly. And carbs are essential for performance.
100%.
Right? Fat and protein should be prioritized probably first for most humans, but athletes, it might be different.
Totally. So, well, and it's difficult because that true or false, I mean, it's not so much black and white because, of course, I'm thinking of my clientele, right? So I'm like, technically, if they're not consuming enough carbohydrates, then they're having to get those calories from somewhere else. They're dipping too much into the protein, too much into the fat. So in the end, it's not going to be, ideal for hormonal health. But obviously, that fat is going to be the real key player there in your hormones. And if you're under consuming fat, especially, I think it's below 20% of your total calories from fat, that can really, really start to impact hormonal health.
Yeah. I just your brain function too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
The linkages there are pretty strong. So if we're to think about performance versus aesthetics, I think it's pretty easy to get caught between this, tension of how you look and how you perform. And, I know for Fiolaki, we wore like a singlet. Practically, it was really tight.
Yeah.
Our skirts are short. It's hard not to think about aesthetics.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you found in your experience, in terms of just kind of getting over this hurdle between performance and aesthetics?
It's really hard. And I kind of speaking to what you were saying with your field hockey is what you did.
Yeah.
I was a swimmer and a dancer. So talk about all aesthetics. Yeah. Definitely underfueled a lot of my dancing and swimming career too. But I will say that especially with athletes, they have this common misconception that the leaner you are, the faster you are, the better you perform. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing, especially even at, I think automatically of this hockey player and this MLB pitcher that I've worked with recently, where their main goal was to just get leaner. They just wanted to get under that 10%. They really want to be under 10%. And there really wasn't a reason why. It was just more aesthetic. Like they were mainly just trying to be lean, just to look better in general and be the leanest one on the team. And then they realized their performance started to suffer from it. Both of them will tell you it's the worst they've felt truly during a season. And also they had a higher risk of injury. They did actually both get injured that season. And a lot of it just goes back to they assumed it meant to eat less, like to get as lean as possible, you had to eat less. And in doing so, that kind of led them to that underfueling cycle. They didn't have enough energy in the tank to really optimize performance, optimize recovery. So I think it's just a common misconception with, to get as lean as possible, I need to eat less, I need to eat less carbs. And it ends up kind of resulting in underfueling. And
which macronutrient were they under eating?
So actually both carbs and fat. They were doing well with protein. I actually do see most of my pro athletes do a pretty good job of protein. They know how important it is, but it's the carbohydrates and the fat that both tend to get neglected.
I think we think that women are the ones that are underfueling, but clearly you're just talking about an ice hockey player and MLB player who are underfueling within this kind of pursuit of being as lean as possible.
Yeah.
Are there different repercussions for women versus men when they're in this kind of constant hypocaloric state?
Obviously, with women, we run into more issues with loss of menstrual cycles. So they're more at risk of, I feel like, more fluctuation with their hormones because there's so much going on every single month. We have, the estrogen that takes off after the follicular phase, and then you've got the progesterone. So I think there's just more at stake there with their hormonal health than there is for men. I think that with women, we can see that they're underfueling a lot sooner than with men too. So that's why we assume, this is just an assumption by me, that's why we assume that it's more common, more prevalent in women because, well, there's a loss of a menstrual cycle. So clearly she's underfueling. With men,
you get this really clear signal.
Yeah. With men, I feel like they can brush it off as, oh, it's just been a long week and that's why I'm feeling tired. Or, oh, it must be because of XYZ. And they often don't look at the fact that they are underfueling. They may just not have the education or just not be aware they're unintentionally underfueled without even really realizing it, unless we can look at, testosterone levels or see, vitamin D and iron and take a look at different micronutrients and see what's going on there.
Do you see markers of sleep and recovery shift?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sleep, definitely. When someone is underfueled, it can have a huge impact on sleep. So typically what can happen is I'm sure you've heard of leptin. Obviously leptin and ghrelin is talked a lot with appetite and hunger, they're hormones, but we see decline in leptin when someone is underfueled. And so that can start to impact sleep. Obviously cortisol, we see an increase in cortisol when athletes are chronically underfueled. So they are in a chronic energy deficit. We see that increase in cortisol in the evening, essentially. So instead of that like natural decline that it has, it kind of spikes in the evening. So, and I mean, you can definitely speak more onto this too with the sleep topic, but that's something that I think can absolutely be impacted by underfueling.
Well, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. If you could just unpack why people fast. Mm-hmm. So if you were to talk to all the clients that you work with, both men and women, what is the impetus behind fasting? I guess that's the first question. And then what kind of impact do you see fasting has on performance?
So to go with your first question, and it's interesting because obviously my clientele is athletes, but I also work with a lot of CEOs. So I work with a lot of business executives, people that have very, very stressful jobs, but aren't necessarily on the field, right? And so for some of those people, I have seen fasting be very beneficial, especially males. It just helps with weight loss, number one, especially if they stress eat and late at night, kind of stopping that late night feeding, or especially if they're drinking, it's, setting that set, all right, it's 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whatever else I'm done. But it's also been helpful for their mental clarity. They just feel like it's had an improvement there. For women, I honestly have not seen as much fasting. I think, thankfully there's been some, Stacey Sims, for example, has spoken out about it, but it's not been as promoted as much in women because we don't see the same benefits. So I want to say it's like more like if you do a prolonged past 12-hour window fast. Now with athletes, I think it gets a little bit tricky because you just, especially if you have such high energy needs, you're really just making it that much harder on yourself to get that many calories in. So in a shorter window. Totally. Yeah. So if you have a baseball player who's, trying to get 4,800 calories in and you don't start eating until, let's say they're doing a fasted window of, 1 or we'll say 12 and 8. That's a common one, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Well, your game is at 7. So are you going to stop eating at 8 p.m.? And then what are you going to do about post game? And then it just, again, makes it really hard for you to actually hit your caloric needs in such a small window. So certain athletes, I should say, that really should not be doing intermittent fasting, especially if you're trying to, maintain or gain lean muscle.
So you think like the biggest downside is that, number one, you're just not getting enough calories. Is there any reason why we would want to distribute those calories more evenly across the day as opposed to kind of putting them, consolidating them into a shorter window?
Yeah. So kind of going back to that myth of underfueling only being in female athletes or only the case if you are losing weight. Like I have a lot of athletes, they'll come to me, and I'll take a look and I'll be like, you're really underfueling. And they'll be like, what are you talking? Like how? And I'm like, well, technically, even if you're maintaining your weight or even if you're gaining weight, you can actually still be underfueled. And it's really just a matter of that nutrient timing and not fueling your body in key moments when it needs it most. That can be underfueling. So you are starting your practice or your game or whatever else underfueled. And that in turn can impact your performance. So sure, by the end of the day, you hit 4,000 calories, but you did the bulk of it after your body needed it, right? So you're not going to get those same benefits that you would have seen had you spaced it out a little bit more appropriately. The one thing that I really try to work on with athletes is, okay, let's try to, not necessarily saying every athlete needs to eat breakfast, but like, let's try to at least get some of the right nutrients, and by the right nutrients, carbohydrates, protein, pre, during, and post. If we can at least get the timing spot on with that, then you'll see a world of a difference with performance, with recovery, with sleep, all of it.
And once you deploy this intervention, do you see marked changes in
100%.
Yeah. Are the athletes happier too? Like maybe talk about some of the subjective, just mood and emotional regulation. And we know obviously.
Right. Well, with underfueling, I mean, a lot of the symptoms or signs that you see, they have poor energy. So they have that like greater perceived exertion. So the same workouts, they feel harder. And I know I mentioned with you, earlier, right before we started recording, I was just talking about how, some athletes, they get to June in a baseball season, for example, and they feel like I'm already gassed, and it's like, well, it's June. Like we haven't even hit the All-Star break yet. It becomes such a long season. And so you have to really prioritize your nutrition every single day or it'll catch up to you with that rate of perceived exertion. Those same workouts will feel so much harder. And so they do notice an improvement there. Obviously helps with the sleep. They sleep better when they're fueled and they don't, they're not experiencing the blood sugar dips, things like that. So definitely see some improvements, cognitive health wise too, less irritable, mood swings, a little bit more focus, because that can play a role too if, you're underfueled, and just help with that cognitive health during workouts and games.
So when athletes are, again, maybe have a much narrower window where they're trying to like cram in 4,800 calories or whatever, based on their activity requirements throughout the day. But when they're, I guess, pushing the timing really close to bed, do you see anything different versus like maybe loading a lot of the calories, more so in the morning? Like, is there any benefit to either one of those approaches?
Usually your cravings, your appetite is so much larger if you are in such a huge deficit. I know I keep bringing up baseball, but it really is a key part of my clientele here. But what I see is typically they go all morning without eating. So then it's about 1:00 and that's their first meal of the day. And usually their appetite is kind of poor because they had a not great night of sleep the night before, which we'll get to because it's a never ending cycle here. So 1:00 might be that first meal of the day. And then they kind of get busy. They're doing stuff at the field. They may or may not even have a single snack, but they likely have one, if not two different coffee drinks. And so then they're having caffeine likely before that 7:00 game, which kind of, it's tough because obviously, caffeine is such a great ergogenic aid, right? Like it's so beneficial. But when you have those games every single night at 7, it's just kind of it's a double-edged sword. Like you want to have the benefit of the caffeine, but also it's, now it's going to potentially impact your sleep if you're having that at 6:00, 7:00 at night. Then they have that, pre-game meal. Maybe it's really light, especially what I see. I work with a lot of pitchers. They like to pitch on a light stomach. They don't like to have a lot of food. So now they're really underfueled. And then they go in and usually in the middle of the game, they're not really eating much, especially carbohydrates. They may have like sunflower seeds, which is great for the sodium, but not really a great source of carbs. And then, of course, post-game is when they really overindulge in, I see a lot of ice cream post-game. Well, when I say post-game, I mean like once they get back home late at night, playing video games and whatnot. They do all the snacks just really late at night and then probably don't go to bed until 1:00. That starts to impact their sleep. A lot of them struggle with, waking up multiple times or just taking a long time to shut off their brains after games. And that high fat food, that excess amount of calories is really just making it that much harder for them to go to sleep. And then that cycle just continues over and over and over again.
Yeah. I think professional athletes, so it's just a vicious cycle. These late games are really tough from a performance standpoint, which is kind of ironic,
Every day, every night.
I know. And and then, trying to wind down, playing the video games, all of a sudden it's 3 a.m., and we know where that goes.
Yeah.
But I worked with an MLB pitcher who was addicted to video games.
Oh yeah, a lot.
So I wondered why his sleep was so messed up. I'm like, well, this is probably why.
Yeah. And I get it. I mean, it's hard to shut off your brain. And it's just one of those things that it can really help to shut off your brain essentially, but like not that late at night. It's not ideal.
I know. So, it's tough. It's really tough. I feel for those guys. Let's talk inflammation recovery and gut health. Are the gut biome tests beneficial? So, I mean, I think, there's lots of tests that can that claim
like the GI mapping
to kind of give you,
Yeah.
And I'm just a little skeptical of them because they seem to lack standardization and some clinical validation, yet they seem so widespread.
Right.
And everyone's using these, kind of tests as some sort of diagnostic, but I don't really see the evidence for that. So I'm so curious to get your thoughts on.
I never have ever used them. I have had some athletes come to me because maybe they outsourced and they went to someone and they want me to analyze the results. So I have looked at results myself.
Yeah.
But to me, I feel like it's almost just a little bit, the marketing has just been far, far, far quicker than any of our research.
It's outpaced the science.
Yes, it's outpaced the science. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
And so for me, it all comes down to, every time I've seen the results, which I want to say it's mainly only been 3 or 4 times probably max. Every time it's, you need more prebiotic fiber and, you'd benefit from a probiotic. Okay, cool. Like, did we need you to send your stool sample in to get this? Like, we could have looked at your diet history. We could have even looked at blood work to see if there's any underlying issues of unexplained micronutrient deficiencies, things like that, to see that your gut's not working properly. Or if you're, constantly getting sick, you're getting respiratory infections and colds all the time. And that can be a sign of poor gut health too. So do I think they're necessary? Absolutely not. I don't run them. I don't fully trust the accuracy of them either. I think it'd be great to see more research. And I've changed my mind, over the years of certain things that, hey, if more research comes out and proves me wrong, then great. Like, let's do it. But for now, I don't. It's the same with food sensitivity testing. I don't do the IgG testing either. So yeah, at least in my experience, IgG testing has not been very accurate. I'm specifically talking about the at-home 1 drop of blood test that some athletes have done. It's always come back as the foods that they just had the night before or within the last 48 hours. And then
that got flagged as sensitive.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's like a false positive that has come up for them because those antibodies are just currently
and then you get it in your brain that I'm sensitive to these foods and that has a placebo.
Yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, well, no wonder. I love sweet potatoes. No wonder. And it's like, well, you just ate it, yesterday. And then we'll introduce it back in. And then it's almost just creates this false fear over very nutrient dense foods that's unnecessary. So I always recommend they meet with an allergist, get a little bit more professional advice there. And then we can always run the test too. But for one example, I like to give is the athlete that took the IgG test. And then, 3 months later, it came up with completely different foods that came up as sensitive. And they didn't even change anything really about their diet. So
it's these static tests that are kind of measuring one point in time.
Yeah.
And that one point in time is very much influenced, to your point, what you just ate, how you slept, what you trained, how you trained that day, any other supplements you might have taken, right?
100%.
They've got to all factor in, right?
Yeah. Gosh. Nutrition's complicated. And I know know with this, all the research you do, it's really complicated to
I mean, I'm not a nutrition scientist. I do lots of type of, nutrition research, but I'm not a scientist in this area. So I really appreciate your perspective. I think inflammation is a word that gets thrown around a lot. What does inflammation mean in your world? And how do you think about it in terms of nutrition you recommend?
Yeah.
How you think about recovery?
You're right that it's thrown around everywhere on social media. And, it's like people see the word inflammation and they automatically think like, it's bad, I'm inflamed. Yeah. And there's acute and there's chronic. And really that acute inflammation is actually kind of a good thing, especially for athletes. It's helpful for that training adaptation, seeing progress. And as you know, it basically takes place right after a hard workout. You have, a little bit of that acute inflammation that happens. Now with chronic inflammation, that's something a little bit more serious, more in-depth going on. That's almost like how, I would compare it to with underfueling. You can do underfueling here and there, maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, but once it becomes chronic underfueling, that becomes low energy availability, which then becomes REDS. That's the same with acute inflammation. If you don't manage it, you don't do anything to it, now it's chronic. And then that's where chronic inflammation can then turn into so many other health issues down the road. So
REDS, relative energy deficiency.
Yes.
Is this just women? Or men can experience REDS too.
Yeah.
I feel like that gets just bucketed into the female issue.
Yeah.
But
and when I was in college, it's interesting. When I was in college, it was still the female athlete triad. So it was basically that female athlete triad that then turned into read as relative energy deficiency in sport, because it's not solely just women. It's also in men too. So with inflammation, it's going to be more so about managing it from a nutrition standpoint when it becomes chronic. So again, that acute inflammation, I wouldn't be concerned about that. That's important for, adaptation.
So you don't want to introduce nutritional interventions or protocols to try to reduce inflammation per se.
For that acute, no. And that's actually a really good point you bring up. And we see research where supplementing with say large doses of vitamin E or vitamin C immediately after a workout is actually detrimental to the recovery process. Same with NSAIDs use. I see a lot of pictures, they're just, popping NSAIDs and that can also interrupt that acute inflammatory response, which you want.
Like an ibuprofen.
Yes.
Yeah. We actually see when folks, so just at population levels, when folks report using NSAIDs, they have this is shocking, almost 15% decrease in sleep efficiency.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
And I wonder
what the mechanism,
like gut biome, right? Like some sort of
it's such a huge irritant to the gut.
Interaction that somehow is not allowing you to drop into these deeper stages of physiological sleep. I don't know exactly.
It's interesting because I know, it definitely is a gut irritant. So I wonder how that impacts it.
Maybe just pause there, because I think that a lot of athletes, I know when I was an athlete, when I was coaching, I look back on my student athletes and I'm like, they were popping NSAIDs literally all season long. And I feel so bad that I didn't have the knowledge to be able to be like, whoa, okay, we're probably overtraining because you're so damn sore all the time.
Yeah.
You know, how do you maybe just talk a little bit about
Well,
NSAIDs,
if you're, and I think it is used, it's used as a crutch. This muscle soreness is so intense. I need something to help with it. And so they reach for that NSAID. And I think that's where okay, light bulb moment. I think something else is going on. We need to address nutrition. And could it be underfueling that's causing it? Absolutely. Or it could also be the types of foods you're fueling your body with that are not very anti-inflammatory. So that's why I really preach, and my athletes will roll my eyes at it, but fruits and vegetables are so key here because they are so rich in antioxidants. So if we can get things like berries and leafy greens and nuts and seeds and things like that in your diet, it really does make such a big impact. Things that are rich in vitamin C and vitamin E, and just, different types of polyphenols will be so helpful for inflammation.
What kind of quantities do folks need to eat in order to get the benefits that you're talking about in terms of just helping with systemic inflammation?
Gosh, so the general guidelines are 5 servings of fruits and veggies a day. And I would say the bulk of our pro athletes are eating at least 12 servings. If not, some are eating closer to 15 servings. Just because, in general, their calorie needs are so much higher too, that it's easier. It sounds like a lot. You're like, holy cow, but a cup of fruit is 1 serving. And then you've got, 2 cups of veggies that you're putting into a smoothie. Then you've got, let's say a little bit of orange juice or some type of fresh juice. You've already got 4 servings right there in a smoothie. If you can get at the very, very bare minimum 5, if not more, that's ideal.
When you think about anti-inflammatory supplements, is there anything that you recommend for your athletes?
So I would say that omega-3 fatty acids are probably the one that I do often recommend. And especially...
Is there a timing component to that?
I haven't found, especially with food, a meal that contains fat, yes. But as far as, taking it in the morning versus taking it at night, I would...
Pre-workout, post-workout?
I'd say whatever's most consistent. With creatine. Creatine, people will say, does it matter when I take it? Sure, around your training, either pre or post, but it matters more so that you are consistent with taking it daily. And to the same sense, omega-3 fatty acids. So whenever you are most likely to remember taking it, and also with some sort of fat, because it needs that fat to be absorbed. I want to say it's 10 grams of fat is ideal in a meal to help absorb the omega-3s. And the reason I recommend that is that there was a study done, it's been a few years now, and I am blanking on the actual percentages, but a large number of their collegiate athletes weren't even coming close to the recommended omega-3s daily.
What would be your recommended for an athlete? Maybe just break it down, males and females. What would you recommend?
Probably about 2 grams per day of omega-3 fatty acids. Which is a lot easier than you think. If you can get 8 ounces of salmon in a week, I say salmon because it's prevalent pretty much everywhere, but mackerel, sardines, any fatty fish. I love halibut.
Those cans are a godsend. I know that there's probably something with the can that's not good for you. It's giving off some sort of plastic.
Nothing,
I don't know.
Nothing is good for you anymore.
I know. I'm like, is there anything that we can eat? But I mean, mackerel. I'd throw that in everything. I mean, have a can a day at least.
The cool thing about the canned salmon, and it sounds kind of gross, but if you get the salmon with bones, it's actually an excellent source of calcium too. So for women that like don't eat dairy,
and it's just ground.
Well, because they're like absorbed. You know, they basically like disintegrate, but they basically like absorb into the salmon. So if you get salmon with bones in the can, they're a fantastic source of calcium.
So it's so funny. I've avoided that because I thought it was going to be just the bone in there. I was like, I don't want to be choking on bone. Like.
You don't have your little like things like pick it out. Yeah. No, thankfully they're like pretty absorbed in there.
Okay. So if I were going to try to hit kind of your recommended amount of omegas per day, and I know it's going to vary by kind of weight and height and all of that, but just give a general recommendation. How much salmon would someone need to have? How many ounces of salmon would someone need to have to hit those requirements? To
hit the requirements, you wouldn't even have to do it every single day. I'd say salmon twice a week, 4 ounces each. And if you want to go more than that, you want to do 6 ounces, or maybe, to hit your specific protein and fat goals, you need a larger portion. 8 ounces is great too, but that bare minimum would be 4 ounce portion 2 times per week. Now, if you're not a fish eater, you would have to eat a larger amount of plant sources. So walnuts are a great source. Chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, getting like a variety of seeds in there would help. But otherwise, it gets a little trickier. So that's why I do recommend, because in college athletics, we don't see a lot. I see this in the minor leagues too, not a lot of fish consumption. So that's where omega-3s come in handy for sure. That supplement.
Quality fish in like, those settings, especially where you've got packaged meals that you're kind of getting on the go, and it just becomes tougher. Yeah. Just as a nutrition scientist, if you can give the audience, myself, a rundown of what supplements are easily absorbed versus not, and what affects absorption, timing, other foods. This seems like the Wild West to me.
It is. It is the Wild West. And there's, a lot of things that I'm not even aware of. Depends on the supplement, because obviously you can have something that is inhibited by other nutrients. Like I'll give you the example of calcium and iron. So they compete for absorption. So if you have a multivitamin that you're taking that, like give the example of a prenatal. I always thought it was fascinating to me that I would have this, prenatal, and it would say it has 18 milligrams of iron, but then it also has 1,000 milligrams of calcium. So it's kind of like they cancel each other out, right? I would honestly work with, a sports dietitian or someone to help pinpoint what supplement specifically you're trying to take and why, so that you know that you're not also taking it at a time when it's going to, inhibit absorption. Same going back to iron again. If you're having it with, say, a cup of coffee, like that can also inhibit absorption too. So, but then there's certain things like, say, vitamin C that increase absorption. Kind of depends on the supplement or the nutrient and, what you're taking it with.
So we can't rely on companies to put out products that are not going to cancel each other out.
Yeah, definitely not. No, unfortunately, you can't rely on supplement companies for much. And I will say, if it's a really, trustworthy company, like I'll say, I love to see like a collagen supplement that has the vitamin C already added to it. Like they've done their research. They know, vitamin C is a precursor to, collagen production. So that's going to help and helps with absorption. So like, cool. They've done their research.
Yeah.
Versus like the prenatal that has the iron and the calcium together.
Right. So I remember sticking in my head, Dr. David Sinclair said, he was talking about his own personal regimen in terms of how he thinks about supplements. And this guy takes, hundreds of pills, right? So this is not the direction I would ever want to go down personally, or I think you'd probably recommend for anyone. But it was interesting because I always had this thought that I need a certain amount of omegas every single day. I need, vitamin D, vitamin C, but how you're talking about it's more about what you're getting over the course of a week.
100%.
Maybe just talk a little bit about that as a principle, because I know I had like this really, I think, incorrect assumption that I need to be having everything every single day. And maybe what do we actually need to be having every single day?
Oh man, I love this because I do, as a dietitian, I look at an entire week when I do a nutrient analysis. So one day shows me like a little snip, but as you know, it can vary so much day to day. Maybe you were traveling that day or, it was a birthday celebration or something. So it matters more so the course of what you're doing over 7 days. So you can see just a little bit more of an average number. And I feel like you probably know this too with all the data you have at Whoop and looking at sleep and strain and seeing it definitely is more helpful to see a full week probably for you than just one off day. And so I would say, what one thing should you do every single day? I think if you can get as close as you can to, say, your carbs, protein, and fat goals, that's where to start for sure. So hit those macros. Yeah, hit those macronutrients. I don't even worry so much specifically about like calories per se first. I'd rather look at, okay, are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough carbs? Are you getting enough fat? And then from there, you know, your vitamins and minerals may be slightly off. So maybe one day you were a little bit under on vitamin E, but then the next day you were over 100% vitamin E. Again, that's why it matters more so what you did on the whole week. Plus you're getting hopefully a variety of foods every single day. So if you ate sweet potatoes one day, like your vitamin A may be great, and then you didn't eat them the next, but instead you ate a huge, I don't know, kale salad. So your vitamin K is great. You know, so again, by the end of that week, you've got sufficient amounts of all vitamins and minerals. So yeah, there definitely is this pressure.
Nutrients are in the tissues and they're in the bone, you know, like they kind of, right there. It's not like you just have them one day and they're gone.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So you would be fine if you don't get, say, enough of, you know, vitamin E in one day and then you do the next day. Like you're going to be all right. Same with, you know, magnesium too. Magnesium, your body will be able to have an amount of magnesium until you eat some more the next day too. So it's just hopefully you're getting some of it. And that's why the week really matters, because if we go a whole week goes by and you're only at 50% of your magnesium, like, all right, that's an issue, you know, versus like, oh, one day you didn't eat enough magnesium, like, oh, but then the next day you ate like 3 large handfuls of almonds, like, I think we're like more okay than we thought we were.
What are the benefits of a prebiotic and a probiotic? And is that something you recommend supplement or food?
I always say food first when you can, especially since a lot of Americans, we just do not get enough probiotics to begin with in our diet. So if you can start incorporating more from food, there's just something to be said for that synergistic response that comes from eating whole foods, right? So when you're having something like kefir or yogurt, like not only are you getting those probiotics, those life cultures, but you're also getting calcium, you're getting a little bit of vitamin D, you're getting protein, like you need those nutrients anyway. So I hate to just have that be a supplement. Now, for some people that are, say, traveling overseas, they may benefit from something like a probiotic supplement too, kind of in the meantime. But it just depends on the person, what's needing to be addressed, if there's something else going on with their gut that they need a specific strain. And then in the case of prebiotics, I really, really recommend food as much as you can. I actually think just in general, people struggle with getting enough fiber. I want to say the average American gets 10 to 15 grams a day when they should be getting at least 25, if not up to like 38 grams for men daily. And so that's something in general that if you get more of those fiber-rich foods in your diet, you will be getting prebiotics in.
We should have 30 grams of fiber a day, right? Ideally.
So it's, general recommendations are like 25 for women, 38 for men, which I would assume a lot of that is like mainly on body size, which I know Stacey Sims has talked a lot about too. It's like, well, I feel like a lot of women would benefit from more like 38 grams, but I would say, if you can get 30 grams at least, it's a lot easier than people think. And once, I shouldn't say supplement because it can be a food or a supplement. One that I do recommend is psyllium husk. Psyllium husk is amazing for people who are wanting to get more fiber, but it's also been really helpful for cholesterol. We're seeing benefits with reducing LDL cholesterol with psyllium husk. And you can take it, it's at the grocery stores, like next to the flaxseed and the chia seed and those things. So you don't have to like take a psyllium husk pill. You can literally just do like a scoop of it in smoothies. You would definitely have to put that in a smoothie because it's a pretty gross taste on its own.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's like eating the outside of a corn husk?
Like the outside of the husk of a corn. Yeah, you'll get tired of it real quick if you just like mix it in water.
Good to know. That's amazing. All right. What's the best way to keep track of all of this? You know, I think for me, that's why nutrition's so hard and why I love physiological data is I can see your HRV over the course of the week and I can calculate your coefficient of variation and I know how you're adapting to load. It's just so much straightforward. How do you do it? How do you help folks track and kind of keep, know if, oh, wow, you need more vitamin E. Oh, whoa, you need more magnesium,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm here for. I try to take all that pressure out of it for them because it's just an added mental load for them. So if they're in the middle of the season, they don't want to be tracking, how much vitamin D they ate from food and versus supplement. They just basically send me food photos. My phone is like just full of food photos.
I can only imagine.
The easiest. Some will like track in like a notes app. Some go as far as using something like Chronometer, but very few athletes actually like put that much work into like, actually tracking themselves, which, hey, I don't blame them. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And so the food photos are really helpful because then I can see right off the bat, hey, this meal is missing this. And then, and my goal is that eventually, which it sounds weird, but my goal is so that they eventually don't need me anymore. Like I want them.
As coach becomes obsolete.
Right. Like I want them to feel so confident in their nutrition that they don't have to rely on me, to get through a whole season again. And if they are, constantly having to come back, then it means I need to hopefully provide some more education. Now, I shouldn't say like, hopefully they come back to me at the beginning of, let's say, every off season or at the start of every season, just to kind of like, touch base, make sure that their nutrition is aligned with their new goals for the season. But my hope is that eventually, they feel confident in making food choices without me.
So for the layperson who might not be able to afford a nutritionist, what's your recommendation in terms of where to start? I suppose tracking macronutrients, and there's lots of great online calculators. You can kind of figure that out pretty quickly, right?
I'd say Chronometer is a good one for that. I think it's much more accurate than something like a MyFitnessPal, where you can go in and you can at least get a baseline target energy needs. It won't be completely accurate, but it'll like at least give you a good idea of where to start.
You just put in some information, your height, your weight, your activity level.
You will have to log. And I will say it's so much easier if you don't go out to eat because there's so much variation that can happen.
Yes.
With even like Chipotle. Like if you type in that you had a Chipotle burrito bowl with chicken, rice, and cheese, like that can vary by hundreds of calories depending on which Chipotle you went with and if they were very generous with their helpings or if they were really stingy on their helpings, right? So like you could be off quite a few hundred calories if you got to eat.
I have a Chipotle tip.
Oh, okay. What's your tip?
So if you want more protein, don't tell them you want double protein until they give you the first protein and then say, oh, I want double protein.
And then they'll do it again. Okay.
And you end up with more protein.
Interesting. Okay. Did you hear that, baseball players? Because this is
my son literally, I'm like, dude, bro, we need no more DoorDash. Yeah.
But can I have a little bit more protein? Oh, and also I want double.
Yeah. And then you get the,
very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say it's so much easier and more accurate. And if you're like, man, I've been tracking and I don't know why I'm not losing weight. Like again, if you go out to eat, this could be why, because those estimates are they can just, be so far off.
So you would say, I mean, I think I know for me, when I was trying to figure out, this was after I had my daughter, so it's my second child, and I was like trying to get back on track, and I really started tracking. And I'm more of like an intuitive eater nowadays. Like but I think I'm able to be an intuitive eater because I did track 100%. And weigh my food pretty religiously for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And now I really don't need to.
Yeah.
And I guess, is that what you'd recommend? I know it's hard for women, or anyone in general. We don't want to get obsessive, right? But I think there is something to just understanding what your body needs.
It's about having a little bit of that nutrition knowledge. Like let's say you're trying to make improvements to your body composition. You're not even trying to, necessarily like become the fastest person in your CrossFit class or whatever else. Like you just really want to start seeing a little bit of improvements to your body composition, but you have no idea what you're eating in a day as far as like protein, carbs, and fat. I would absolutely start with tracking just for a week to kind of get an idea. It's so eye-opening. And even with my clients on their very first meeting, I'll have them fill out like this assessment form and they won't even take pictures. They'll just write things down and they'll be like, wow, this was so eye-opening, just to write it down and realize like it's almost like they could kind of see why they weren't reaching their goals already without even meeting with me. And I think it's just, we get so busy throughout our day. We don't even realize, kind of what we're eating. It's just not a priority. And so I think if you can track even for just a little bit, and like you said, weigh things without, it becoming an obsession,
was like a game changer for me.
It's helped a lot of my clients too, for sure, because they didn't know. And it can go in both ways. Maybe they're like way overestimating their food or way underestimating. And so if you can weigh it even just a little bit, like you'll be like, oh, wow, going back to that, like significantly or unknowingly underfueling, like, oh, wow, I'm not even close to how much, XYZ I need.
So when people underfuel, why do they not lose weight? Or does that happen?
Oh, it does. Yeah. So it can go one of three ways, right? So you can be underfueled and lose weight unintentionally. You can be underfueling and still be maintaining the same weight, or underfueled and actually be gaining weight. And again, the underfueling in the example of maintaining or gaining weight would be because you are underfueling at those key moments when your body needs it most. Right. So essentially you are underfueled for performance. And so you're not necessarily in a caloric deficit per se, like you're still hitting your calories, but maybe you're underfueling in carbohydrates or protein or fat or a combination of, maybe it's just that macronutrient distribution is off or the nutrient timing is off. So that's where providing that nutrition education so they know it's way more than just calories, but also timing, macronutrient distribution that makes a difference.
Amazing. For women specifically, what have you seen with your client population, and maybe what have you experienced yourself in terms of where do women go wrong most of the time? Are there specific nutrients where female athletes tend to be most deficient?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny because if you were to ask me this, I'm thinking back of, I've been in this for 11 years now. And looking back, I think I would have initially said protein, but I think there's just been so much larger of an emphasis on protein now that it's almost kind of become a little bit more again, on carbohydrates and fat. And it kind of depends on what the environment is around them and who they're getting their information from on whether they're going to be like inadequate on carbohydrates and or fat. In the endurance population, I still significantly see underfueling on actually fat. Just because, they do know, okay, I need carbs before, I need carbs during, I need carbs after, but where does that leave room for fats? And so these women are just not getting enough fat. It's starting to impact their hormones, obviously, because fat plays a huge role in that. And so I think it just really depends.
And you need fat to burn for fuel.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Especially if you are an endurance, like a long endurance athlete, and it's,
because you're going to use up the carbs and you need the fat.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a perception of, if I eat fat, I'm going to get fat?
I do. And it's sad because I feel like we were almost like past that a little bit and now it's kind of coming back a little bit. Back. Yeah, there is a fear over fat. And a lot of that just, I think, has to go to the fact that it's so calorically dense compared to carbs and, per gram compared to carbs and protein. Yeah. So for those that don't know, like per gram, carbohydrates have 4 calories, protein has 4 calories, fat has 9 calories. So for someone who is trying to cut calories specifically or get lean, a lot of the times fat is the one that goes out the window. Like I have one client in particular I'm thinking of who is not an athlete and is like scared to eat more than like a small handful of cashews because it's so calorically dense. And I'm like, but you need those nutrients, all those minerals. And so, I think it's definitely come back with females.
Is there anything else that you've learned with females specifically over the years that you just feel like our women listeners need to know with regard to fueling and performance?
Yeah, I'd say, and I say this to almost every single one of my female athletes, we are not, because most of the times they are not eating enough. Again, it could be in key moments or just by the end of the day. And I always tell them, we're not eating more to gain weight. We're eating more we're fueling better to perform better and recover better. So I think once they get that out of their mind of, I'm not eating more to put on weight, right? Like, because they have that fear of when I increase their calories of, oh gosh, this is going to make me gain weight. Like that's not the goal here. We're really trying to eat more to fuel your body in the right way.
Yeah. I feel like, you're you're a nutritionist, but you're also a mindset coach in a lot of ways. Maybe talk about that. That part of the job, because that's huge. Just hearing you talk, like I can hear you kind of working through those conversations.
You really have to understand the why. And I've worked with a lot of females who have become very restrictive towards food, have different restrictions.
Like an all or nothing kind of.
Yeah, well, and I
guess that's different.
I shouldn't just say even females, because I've worked with several males with this too, in different sports. But yeah, I would say they have like an all or nothing mentality. Maybe they were told by a coach, like I'll give the example of figure skating. I've worked with a lot of figure skaters where they just have some not great information from the people that are closest to them, and so it takes a long time for me to build trust with that person. I can't just come out and I have before one time. Give the example of just coming out way too hot on the first meeting and way too blunt. And then kind of like they were kind of turned off by it because I was basically like, what, you need carbs, blah, 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 blah. But they, again, just had so much trust in this coach who they have their whole life that if they're telling them like, hey, you can only eat 1,200 calories. And then I'm coming in like, what? They're crazy. Like you can't. You just have to like start to understand the why, build that empathy and really try to build that buy-in with them so that they do start to trust you. And with these athletes in particular, I try to do different challenges, try to kind of like get them to push past the restriction, but it takes a long time. I mean, some of these athletes we work with for years, for, 2-3 years, till they really, really are like, okay, I can go off on my own now. But
habits and mindsets around food are entrenched.
Yes.
From the toddler,
Mm-hmm.
it's...
Yeah. And now as a mom of 2 girls, it's just so important for me to like make sure that I have a positive, outlook on all foods. And
yes,
because I would hate for them to have to go through, that restrictive mindset around food.
I know. And it's hard because you can do everything right in your home too. And
oh, totally.
Your children still can develop.
There's it's TikTok and all the social media and the peers around them. And I know.
It's really challenging, and I think, I think your lens is a really interesting one. You work with men and women, and it's rare. Usually people have a very, I guess a niche, I suppose, that they operate in. So it's really cool that you're kind of working across both men and women. When you think about some of these entrenched mindsets, you mentioned empathy and kind of meeting them where they're at. Is there anything else that you found helpful to get a person thinking beyond just the calories?
Yeah. So in my book, I have a book, Fuel Your Body. It came out a few years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But
writing a book is really hard.
It's hard. It is. It's a lot of work. But there's a chapter in there, a very short chapter about nourishment over numbers. So I talk about this a lot with, again, female athletes specifically that have built such a restriction and obsession over the calories and the macros. But it's basically talking about how food is so much more than calories or so much more than macros. It goes beyond that. And it's, how is this nourishing me mentally and physically? So when I talk through that with them and talk about, like, hey, an avocado isn't just, because they'll look at a food and be like, that's too much fat, so I try to educate them from a sense of like, hey, did you know that this actually has, it has fiber, it's got vitamin E, it's got antioxidants, and this is why it's helpful.
And your skin health and your brain health.
Totally. Yeah. And so how can we, and then that's where I actually have them write down their fears, in one of our first meetings. And so that's where we try to push past, and we don't ever go through all the fears, right. It takes a long time, like I said, but try to push back that, through one fear at a time. And they feel so proud, once they can do it. And then and I always say okay, and what happened after, did you die? No.
Yeah.
Really, and
did you gain 30 pounds overnight?
Yeah,
no.
Yeah. No, actually I felt amazing, so it's really cool once they kind of have that click that happens when they realize that food is so much more than just numbers.
Yeah. I feel for you. It's a hard job. When you think about the short term versus the long term in terms of kind of your overall metabolic health, what are some things that I think folks can do today that will contribute to their short term performance, but also ensure that they're, healthy years down the road? I mean, I think about some of the statistics on just metabolic health globally, and it is just really bleak.
Yeah.
When you're talking just really by the year 2024, I think it is predicted that 1 billion people will be suffering from some sort of metabolic dysfunction. So we're kind of in a pretty big crisis mode, I think. So if we think about this long-term kind of, problem, how do you think about setting someone up in the very short term in a way that's sustainable, that will allow them to kind of have lifetime metabolic health?
Oh gosh. I mean, this could go so many different ways. The first thing that comes to mind is obviously movement. We know how important movement is, whether it's actually going to a gym and getting a workout in or literally just going for a 10-15 minute walk. If you can walk, I think that is so powerful. If you can walk outside, even more benefit. You're getting that, outdoor time too. But from a nutrition standpoint, I think, I'm seeing two things going on. I'm seeing us become very phone obsessed, very screen time obsessed, and then also relying so much on convenient foods and so much on ultra processed foods because we don't have time. I thought of this, actually on my flight over here when I saw everyone on their phones, and I thought, I'm so curious what everyone's screen time is. You can swipe over and see what your daily screen time is. So I would give a challenge to listeners, and I would say, go look today what your screen time is, and specifically your social media, your average weekly social media or social network time. And let's say it's 1 hour. So challenge yourself to cut that in half. Yeah, which it's probably a lot more than that. Yeah. But challenge yourself to cut that in half, and whatever time that you spent on social media. So let's say it's an hour. So half of that, 30 minutes, you have to devote to some sort of meal prepping, cooking, something that involves doing things with like actual whole foods versus ultra processed foods, because you can't use time as the excuse when you've had 3 hours on TikTok. Like you just can't. So if you are able to devote even just half of that time to even just 30 minutes to chopping up some veggies so that they're the first thing you see when you open the fridge, or making 5, like I could make 5 yogurt parfaits with like a plain Greek yogurt, little drizzle of honey, some chia seeds and flax seeds, and then like some berries on top. And look, like you have snacks ready to go for, a whole week in a few minutes. So, and this is something I myself need to listen to as well, because I'm not an innocent one here. I spend too much time on social media too, and screen time. But I think it's just
part of your business also, though.
Right.
To be fair. But yeah.
Right. Exactly. So I think, if we're able to, number one, devote more time to movement, and number two, less time to the screens and ultra processed convenience foods, and spending more time on that, going back to whole foods, those would be helpful, not only in the short term, but gosh, in the long term, so much in the long term. And fiber, I know I've talked about fiber, but I cannot stress that enough. If we can get more fiber in our diet, it's going to be so helpful for so many reasons.
Yeah, I think fiber, we're kind of obsessed talking about protein, but fiber, damn, just doesn't get enough airtime.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it's, this is the same with like creatine. When I was being interviewed on podcasts like 6-7 years ago, people were like, you got to be the spokesperson to creatine. Like that's such a bad rap. And now it's like everywhere.
I know.
Okay, great.
I know. Is that part of the stack that you recommend? Like a non-negotiable? Yeah.
Definitely. Love creatine. It's great. So, but hopefully fiber has that moment. And unfortunately, like, fiber is being put into things like the pops that are like prebiotic sodas, and I say pop. I'm from the Midwest, so I say pop. The soda that's it's prebiotic. Like that's not a great place to get your fiber. That's not like eating a cup of raspberry.
You want to get it from Whole Foods,
right?
Is the place. Yeah. And there's so many like really tasty foods that have lots of fiber.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You skipped over. Well, I think you were going to say it, and you kind of skipped over it, but muscle. Just when we think about glucose control and muscle, and I just feel like that has to be part of the strategy, right? The diet, the long-term metabolic health strategy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. If we're able to do some sort of weight training,
your muscles are sponges.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. You've got to do some sort of weight training, and especially females. Like it blows my mind how I feel like it has been improving, especially with people, like the women are not small men type movement and getting more popular there. But it's just really sad to me how, few women, especially as we get older, are scared to lift weights. And when we hit, perimenopause and menopause, like it becomes even more important. Our estrogens decline. We've got to find a way to help
become more
with
insulin resistant without even no diet changes.
Yes.
Which is really frightening.
Yeah, it's very scary. So, and I mean, our bone mineral density, everything else. So it's just, if you start lifting weights, walking, lifting weights, you don't have to be running marathons, like you just do some things at your home,
get some kettlebells, walk with them.
Yep. If you're uncomfortable,
get your kids little kettlebells,
get a personal trainer for a couple times, or go with your friend to a some sort of like, fitness class together. And
yeah. I mean, I think about how much just the general American population, spends on coffee drinks, specialty coffee drinks, you could just save a couple of those per week and literally see a trainer.
Yeah. Well, and I'm the dietitian for Center. So Center is an online platform. They have an app and a lot of, fantastic at-home workouts, which require some that have no equipment at all.
Yeah.
Some that have very minimal equipment like dumbbells. So, not a plug to Center, but kind of, a plug for Center, because they are amazing. I mean, anybody can do them, and you can start from very, very, very beginner to, an extreme advanced wanting to do a Center Power program. So
there's so many online resources.
Yeah.
For folks who are trying to get their nutrition on track and are looking for resources, I know folks can follow you online. What's your Instagram handle?
Elite Nutrition. So, but
Nutrition.
It's ELEAT. Little play on words there. So ELEAT Nutrition.
Oh, I love that.
Elite Nutrition. Yeah.
It took me a second. Angie, thank you so much for all your wisdom and insight today. Just phenomenal.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good work. Yeah.